Hello, good afternoon here in Europe. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this special event. I'm Ignacio Navarraga, the SICAM director. I will be sharing this event, especially with Sara Bareilles, who's here also as deputy director of SICAM. As you probably know, in 2015, the United Nations declared February 11 as the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. And at SICAM, we thought that this could be a good moment to celebrate, reflect, and discuss about contribution that women have had in our field in molecular simulation and modeling. And along the year, we have been thinking how to face this event, and we decided to do that by, on the one hand, enrolling in a dissemination, a bit unusual type of activity with respect to what we do at SICAM, to try to convey the way we do science to people, to younger audiences, because this is an issue that really starts early in our lives and in how we operate as society. And also, more specifically, we decided then to organize this afternoon as a special event to talk about the role of women and girls in our field. And we try to do this in the way that we like in SICAM, which is by having the opportunity to discuss and to very informally exchange our views and opinions. And in that sense, in this flavor, we thought in having a time for conversations in this event. So we'll have to structure it in two parts. There is one in which we have, it's a pleasure to have with us 4 women scientists in different moments of their scientific professional careers, Ruth Lindenbell, Julia Galli, Clémence Corminboeuf, and Magali Benoit. And the idea here is to have the opportunity to have this conversation, to share experiences, to share perspectives on their careers and how they have gone through professionally and how they see and have experienced the role of women in particular in science. And then there will be a second part that will be also a conversation with Susanna Raule and Sara Minetti, who have been the authors of these comics I was referring to, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss about with them the process of creation of a comic, scientific comic, and how they have also lived this experience of interacting with scientists to understand what is the objective of this comic. So, as I said, there will be also ample time for all the audience to participate. We really very much also want to launch this conversation with the panelists as a way to set the scene, to learn and to hear, but we are also open and interested and hoping that there will be also an active and lively participation from the rest of the audience in this conversation. So I hope everybody will enjoy it. And just before we start, as usual with these online activities, just one slide with a couple of technical remarks so that we understand how to interact. First of all, this event will be recorded, is being recorded, and will be made available in the SICAM YouTube channel, so that then it can be also, you can come back to it or you can disseminate it. It can be accessible at any time afterwards. Participants are not able to activate your video during the duration of the Zoom session, and also you cannot use the chat feature. So all the interaction between the audience and the panelists will take place through the Q&A feature of Zoom. So the idea is that whenever you want to participate, you can simply indicate so in the Q&A. There is no need for you to type the whole question. You simply say that you want to participate, then we will take care you will receive a notification that you can unmute yourself, and then you mute, and then you can ask the question. And we prefer this mode of interaction because depending on how the question evolves, that also allows for a more interactive and informal exchange with the panelists. So don't be afraid to simply indicate the question, and then the chair will, whenever it's appropriate, will indicate that you can participate in the conversation. Okay, so I will stop here the slide, and then now we can really move on to the event itself. So I will now leave the floor to Sara Bareilles, who is the SICAM Deputy Director, who will be sharing the conversation. So now, Sara, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful panelists for accepting to help us celebrate this day. This is a celebration. A celebration is a moment to see where we are, but also where we want to be in a little while. And so I think we should try to sort of tell stories, share experiences, because experiences to me are much more powerful than data. And then through our experiences, maybe we can see, the road that has been traveled and the one that remains ahead of us to improve a situation that still sees women as a minority in sciences, and in particular, women as a minority in positions of, power or relevance. Full professors are not, female full professors are much less than female young researchers, for example. And this is perhaps one of the items that we may want to address. And then, as Ignacio said, there is going to be a second part of this conversation that will be a bit more original and on the side of how we can be agents of change. This is the theme of this year's UN International Day for Women in Science, how women scientists can be agents of change towards a more sustainable, more inclusive, more diverse society. And this is something where Susanna and Sara will help us. As Ignacio said, completely informal. Anybody in the panel should feel free to ask questions, jump in. Both, the artists that have helped us with the comics should feel free to ask questions to our scientists, and vice versa. Our scientists might have curiosities for our artists today. And it's very nice to be in a situation in which we have these two different words brought together in a whole female panel, which is an unusual, and let's see how exciting experience for us and for the audience. But one thing that I wanted to say before actually getting to the best part of this conversation is that this is not a day that we think about only for women. So this is a moment in which we should all think about uniqueness, diversity, inclusivity, and also about the fact that, behind every great man, there is a great woman. Behind every great woman, there is a great man. And that there are many different models and many different ways in which we can be scientists. And I also wanted to quote a piece of data that always strikes me as odd, which is that it's true, women in STEM faculties are a minority. But if you look at the average of full professors across all disciplines in universities in Europe, you realize that the percent is close to 50-50. Now that tells us that there must be faculties where women are the vast majority at the level of full professors. And these, I discovered, are faculties that have to do with, care, or with humanities, or with, teaching to young people, right? And I am a little surprised that we are always very happy, but also a little surprised at the fact that we always talk about the problem represented by the fact that there are not enough females in STEM faculties, but we never think about the consequences of not having enough males in these other type of faculties, because then, role models are things that our children see at a very young age. And if they only see women as teacher in their nurseries, elementary schools, and middle schools, maybe, and then they only see men when they get to the university, maybe this is a combination problem, not just one. So I'll shut up now. What I would like to do is I would like to invite our panelists to quickly introduce themselves, much more fun than if I read their qualifications. I would do a full tour of the table, so both our scientists and our artists. And then for a little while, we will focus the conversation with Ruth, Julia, Clemence, and Magali. So Ruth, maybe you can start.
Well, I thought the thing that was perhaps relevant in this context is I'm probably the oldest here. I graduated with a BA in 1959. I did my PhD in NMR. It was before there was much in the way of simulation. I went to the University of Sussex in 1965, came back to Cambridge with my husband in 1972, and as a result of conversations with Ian MacDonald, I started doing simulations, I guess, about 1980. The last job I had before I retired was at Queen's University Belfast, and I've been retired now for nearly 20 years and back in Cambridge.
Thank you, Ruth. Magali, do you want to be next? Oops, unmute.
My microphone was up. Thank you very much. First, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here today. And so I am actually a research director in CNRS in Toulouse, in the south of France. And I actually graduated in 1994 from a university in Paris, where I did nuclear and particle physics. But then I decided to change to condensed matter physics and simulations for my PhD that I started in Montpellier. But then I had the opportunity to work with Michele Parinello in Zurich, because he was in Zurich at that time. So I did my PhD there for the first year. And then I followed Michele Parinello to Stuttgart because he moved there. And I finished my PhD in Montpellier. So it was a bit a Europe tour. And then I got a position, CNRS position as a young researcher in Montpellier to study glasses. And I moved to Toulouse in 2005, and now I study metallic nanoparticles mainly, among other things.
Thank you very much, Magali. Julia.
Good afternoon, everybody, and glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity for being here. So I'm Giulia Galli. I'm a condensed matter physicist, and I was educated in Italy. And I did my PhD at SISSA and graduated from SISSA in Trieste in 1987. And this is where my love for simulations actually started, and computer simulation in condensed matter and material science, and now also touching topics in physical chemistry. I went back and forth across the Atlantic a couple of times. I am now in Chicago. I'm a professor at the University of Chicago. I spent some time in Urbana-Champaign right after my PhD. Then I went back to Switzerland, actually to work with Michele Parinello. And after a few years, I returned to the United States, first to work at the National Lab, Lawrence Livermore National Lab, then at the University of California, Davis, and now I'm in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. Clémence?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm from Lausanne. I'm professor here at TPFL, and I actually did my undergrad 60 kilometers from here in Geneva. And I did my undergrad in the late 90s, early 2000, which, if you remember, coincide with the Nobel Prize in DFT in 1998 by Poppel and Walter Cohn. And that's really when I decided to become a theorist. I went in Canada for my master. I had then a PhD between Geneva and Dresden in computational NMR. I have this in common with Hood, actually. And then I did 2 postdocs in the US, in New York and in Georgia. This was kind of a multi-objective optimization problem. We're trying to decide what's best for my career and what's best for my personal life. I think we all share this kind of a complication at some point. And then I came back here as a tenure-track professor in 2007 at EPFL, and then moved to the next career stage here.
And I think, Clémence, you also have a special connection this day.
Special connection.
The UN Day for...
No, yeah, I don't know. You mentioned, yeah, this is true. The UN came up with this February 11, and 2 years ago, it was maybe 3 years ago, because I don't remember COVID being present, so it must have been 3 years ago, exactly in February. They organized a small event there to celebrate women in science, and the theme was visualization in science, and I was invited to present something on visualization in chemistry, and we had a full visit of the United Nations in Geneva, not in New York, and that was really quite interesting, I have to say.
That's cool. So visualization, nice bridge to drawing, storytelling, visual showing of stories. Maybe we can now move to Sara, who could tell us a little bit about herself. Mute.
Hi, I'm Sara from Italy, and I am a comic artist and illustrator. I graduated in 2007, yes, in Florence, and then I work as with my comics and illustration, mainly here in Italy, but with some work in Europe too.
Thank you, Sara. And then last but not least, Susanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susanna Raule. I'm a writer. I wrote several crime novel here in Italy, and I'm a comic book writer. So I worked for in Italy, France, and the US. And it's my first time with Science and Comics, which is the organization who organize the comic attend. So I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you. We are also very happy to have you with us. Yeah, so I mean, comics and science, as Susanna said, they are our partners in crime whenever we think about doing comics. And I have to say that through some magic, they made it so that we have 2 female collaborators involved in this project with us. And maybe a little later on, we will discover if it is common to have female artists engaged in the world of comics, or if we should maybe propose to the UN to create an international day for women and girls in comics. But this is perhaps for the second half. For the moment, so I'll get going with a couple of random questions, but and maybe why don't we start from the beginning, right? I would be very curious to hear from our 4 scientists here, what attracted you to science first? How did you make this choice? And was this an unusual choice in your environment for a girl? Maybe.
Well, shall I start? In those days in England, the secondary schools were nearly all either girls or boys. So that meant that there wasn't this feeling that science was a boys' subject and humanities a girls' subject. And we were told that there were fewer women in science because the teaching of science in girls' schools was less good. When I went to the States as a postdoc, I was expecting to find 50-50 of women and men scientists, because I knew that American schools at that time, high schools, were mixed. And so there should be just as good teachers for science for girls and boys. My great disappointment, I arrived at Caltech in 1981. They had their first women graduate students, I think, 1 year before, and they were even fewer than there had been in Cambridge.
In Cambridge, you didn't have this feeling, because also in Cambridge, the college was
well, there was the good contrast between a women's college where one saw other research students when I was doing PhDs in science, different sciences. One saw women running the college, teaching, and that, but also quite a lot of the teaching was university-wide. So one had, if you like, two lives, a life in the department, and I think the department had about 2 other women out of 90 when I was an undergraduate. And so it was good to have a female environment to come home to, so to speak.
Right. Julia, what about you?
So the real reason why I got interested in science to this day is not clear to me. But one thing that is important and was important from the start for me was that my family was a family where they really encouraged me to be highly educated. So my parents were children, a child and a teenager during World War II, and they couldn't go to school. I mean, they went to school, but they couldn't go as far as they would have liked. And of course, they didn't have an easy life at that time. And then when I was born, and also my sister is 5 years younger than me, really one of their main goals for us was to be educated and to go to school. And the reason why I say that is because this push came with leaving us the flexibility to like whatever we liked. There was not a bias towards, why don't you like this topic that is more for women that, for men. And when I was growing up, I remember liking two apparently different things. One, I was fascinated by planets. And the other is I really was fascinated by how the human body works. And at some point I thought during high school that I wanted to become a medical doctor. And then I changed my mind and I became a physicist.
I see. Clémence, what about you?
Yeah, me, I think I have always wanted to be a scientist. I mean, that was really the thing that I liked the most, sport and science. I was a skier as well, and at the same time as a scientist. And like Julia, she mentioned planet. I was thinking that I would become an astrophysicist, and I ended up picking chemistry. And then there was this Nobel Prize that really fascinated me. But I was always directed toward the scientific field from a very young age. I wasn't very, let's say, a literature type of a liberal type of a student. So as long as I remember, I wanted to be a scientist.
That's interesting. For me, it was always a toss-up between history and science. History, like my father, and science because I liked it. And then I went to the planetarium in Washington and I decided for physics. That was it. Yeah. Magali, what about you?
For me, it really came from my father. My father is a physicist, and he was a professor in the University of Montpellier, and he was very happy in his job. So I think this gave me kind of a role model. And my brother is also a researcher, is a geologist. So I think we both follow the path of our father. Which makes my mother not very happy because she's a French teacher. So she was a French teacher and she was the only non-scientist in the family. But she's okay, I think, with this. But if I didn't decide to be a physicist very early because I didn't want to be like my father. I tried to avoid it, but at the end, it was the thing that I liked the most. So I just decided to be a physicist. And the nice thing I can say that we were able to write a paper together, my father and I was really, really happy about this.
That's great.
I think he's watching me now. So
well, she must be proud, I think.
I hope so.
No, but it's nice to see this combination of environment, family history, and you know, and then it seems that for all of us, this somehow was a natural thing to do. I mean, it's not like but I'd be curious to know if, you know, are there any oppositions that you can remember or any awkward moments? Probably not so much as students, I would say, but maybe later on as you were progressing in your career path. Anybody can take it first. I mean,
well, maybe I can just tell you an anecdote. And while I was certainly always supported in any pursuit of education or you know, in general terms of knowledge by my family, there were awkward moments at school. You know, when I graduated from high school, you know, I was asked what I wanted to do, and I said, you know, I want to study physics. And I remember there was the head of the committee at the time, and he said, no. I mean, the guy was serious. Said, no, don't study physics. You know, you will never find a husband. And you know, the thing that I remember is that that person who told me that didn't say that wanting to be mean. He really meant it. He was concerned for me. And, you know, and this is even worse because it tells you the depth of the problem, right? It's not, and then I said, no, I really want to study physics. And, you know, at the time, of course, I was much younger, and, you know, my reaction were not, how should I put it, as kind as they are right now. So one of my professors who actually liked me very much cut the conversation, and, you know, he told me that just don't answer to him, just, you know, the exam is over. But anyway, and, you know, it was not a real opposition. I could, you know, enroll in physics, and I study physics. But this tells you, you know, the impression of the people at the time, 1980.
That's right. Magali, you want to...
If I may, I have a similar anecdote to tell. And I never felt any kind of opposition during my studies as I was young. We were something like 25% of girls during my studies. So that was quite normal to do science. But it came, the first time I had a sexist behavior from a man was before I started my PhD. I went to see a professor because I didn't know if I would continue in particle physics that I studied, or if I wanted to change to another discipline like condensed matter and things like that. I wanted to have some advice. And this guy, he answered me, well, look, you are a woman. You one day will have children and a family. So I think you should do something like being a high school teacher. It would be easier for you, and forget about research. And I was so shocked because it was the first time that someone told me this. And I was very young, a bit shy, and I didn't answer that I mean, it shocked me very much for a long time that someone could tell me something like that.
Of course, Clémence.
Yeah, it's to follow up on Magali, because I didn't suffer so much from sexist remark at a young age. The first time was really when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I had a meeting somewhere, I don't remember where, but and then it was only male. How we frequently have meeting only with men, all of us, so we know the feeling. And one of them say, "Okay, so what are you going to do now with your lab?" And I didn't really understand the question. And I said, "What do you mean? What I am going to do with my lab?" He said, "But now we will stop working. You are going to have a child. So what will happen with your lab?" And so that, of course, my lab went fine, and my child as well. So.
I would be very curious to know what happened for Ruth in your time. Did you suffer from oppositions and things like that?
No, I think there are great advantages in being unique. I mean, nearly always the only woman. So everybody knows who you are. and one can say firmly what one wants. So when my husband was going to move to Sussex, I went and saw the professor. It was a very new university. And I said, I want half a job because I had a small child. Oh, no, I was pregnant, I think, at that time. And he was, it turned out he was very supportive, but he said, we've never done that before, which I thought was a pretty poor argument for a department that was only 2 or 3 years old. And indeed, he did offer me half a job. And he offered me half a job, and it came saying it wouldn't include a USS, the retirement benefits. And I queried this, and he said, well, you can have it with retirement benefits. I don't think that was the professor. I think that was the central. And I'm very glad I did, because when I came to retire, I had the full 40 years that one needed for a full pension.
Yeah, of course, but this brings us maybe to another facet of this, or another possible facet of this conversation, which is, do you feel that the environment, the structure, the infrastructure, the administration, or even the career steps are somewhat male-oriented versus female-oriented? I don't know. I am really asking the question. You feel that the way in which we are evaluated, for example?
I think, well, things were sort of looser then, but I felt I never had any personal problems with people, but that the whole setup was very much male-oriented. So when my husband was elected to a chair of astrophysics in Cambridge, and we went back there, it was a time when the universities were having to cut back, and there was no way of somebody getting a lectureship who had already sort of been some way along the route of the lectureship. Now, the great thing about Cambridge is it has all these colleges which are independent in some ways. So though I didn't have a university position, I had a college position, and that worked out well.
Yes. Comments from anybody else, maybe on this?
Yeah, maybe on the infrastructure. At the young career stage, when I remember I went to the standard track process, and within chemistry, I think I was the only one, the first one, who went through this process and had a child. So I could not really discuss with my male colleague because they didn't care at all about what I was going through. They were super supportive, but could not really understand. But we had this daycare on campus where all of us put our child there. And this was actually very useful because it was really a place where we could discuss with each other, essentially the woman professor at that time. And this was really helpful for covering vacation after school and giving us a lot of time for research. So I think this type of infrastructure really helped for me, at least.
Julia, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, and this is the type of infrastructure that in most places, on most campuses, is not present in the United States. Actually, I was discussing with my younger colleagues, a woman younger colleague who just had a child. So, there is no very often an infrastructure offered by the campus for childcare. And this means that there is not an infrastructure for networking, as Clément said, which is very important, right? So that you have a support and you can discuss your problems. And also for schools. Actually, Chicago does have a school associated with the university, which is, however, quite expensive. So also afterwards, after the first year for childcare, a support for good education is often public. Good education is often not there. And in my opinion, this is one, not the only one, of course, one serious problems to support, women in science, but not only in science. This is to support the women with a career in general.
Magali.
Yeah, regarding the job itself, I think it's more difficult for women because you have to go through the PhD and then several postdoc positions in different countries for many years. And this is at the time where you want this is the window of age where you want to have children, if you want to have children one day. So I think it's quite complicated to have a partner and have a family at the same moment that you move from country to country. You really need to have someone that follows you, and this is not very simple. And I think it's a bit more difficult for women than for men in our society.
In our society, I agree, in the sense that there is still this cultural sort of environment in which, it's for example, male professors don't really think too much about daycare. In the vast majority, I think that things are changing now, but there is still the idea that it's a woman professor who has to worry about, bringing up the kids.
It's also when you get a job position in a different country, and then you have your husband or your wife, it depends on that has to follow you, and this is not quite often yet.
Yeah, and more than the kids, you mean the dual career issue.
And the dual careers are very complicated to organize. I have colleagues. He is with the children in Spain, and she is alone in England. And then she moved to Italy, and these are very complicated situations, not only for women, but I think because after 40 or 45, it's complicated to have children. Then, and it is about that age that you have your tenure track position. Before it's not settled down, and then it's complicated to have family at the same time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. We have a question about that, but I would ask Francesca Balletto to wait for a few more minutes. No, maybe she's on. Okay, Francesca, go ahead, ask the question.
Hi, ciao Giulia, ciao Magali. Hello. I don't know if Magali, you were referring to me. I don't know.
Yes, I was referring to you. I think your situation is very complicated.
Okay, so for the one that don't know me, I'm now an associate professor in Milan, and before I was a reader at King's College in London. So London is a complicated town. But so as one of my inspirational women is one of the panelists, so I always thought about so Giulia, okay, when I was in trauma, so Giulia Galli was one of my, okay, if she has done it, so eventually I can do it. And the other one is Loredana Casali, so that is still a common friend. So I can. I was an almost a single mom in London with my husband, a professor in Spain, and now I'm a traveling mom with my family in Spain and going back and forward during a kind of still a COVID tail, okay. And yes, I agree that this sometimes is challenging. And every one of my boys is complaining about me, and probably also everyone in my department is complaining about my absences. About infrastructure, I would say that it doesn't exist a unique solution. Always listening to Clemence and Giulia, that so they had kids, if I remember correctly, in Switzerland, of course, so EPFL is offering eventually so a very compact campus, and so eventually you are also living close by. For example, so we discussed many years in London about having or not a kindergarten, and then you realize that so different moms are already so commuting Cambridge or Oxford or so some places, and so it was already so eventually not the best to have something in the campus. I always ask at King's so of being of having at least a list of a babysitter. I never get it. I was the first pregnant woman in the department, and that one also was quite strange. Okay, so being and still the only one pregnant female, not the only one mom, but the only one that was pregnant twice at King's College. So, and that one was weird. Okay, we are in 2020, and it's still rare to see eventually some female and future mom walking across the river.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. It's important to have witnesses, no? People who go through things, because then it's not just something you read somewhere, but it's really sharing experiences, as we were saying. There are two sort of questions that come to my mind. Julia, sorry. Yes.
Thanks, by the way, Francesca, for your kind words. All the difficulties that have been pointed out are true and persistent and still there. But I would like to add a positive note here of a change that I've seen happening during the years, for example, at conferences, right? So the reason when, at the beginning when my kids were born, the reason why I was able to attend conferences, for example, the APS March meeting again was thanks to my family and the Italian way, right? My mother would come at the time of the conference and help me take care of my kids. And now over the years, I've seen childcare organized at conferences, and couples and young couples bring their kids at conferences. This was completely inexistent. It's true for major conferences. And also I've seen a change in men, that, they come and with their partner, and they're in, not all of them, but in many young or youngish men, I've seen a change of heart. They go around the conference with their kids. This is fine, and they are comfortable with that. So I'm not saying that the problems are solved. They are not, and the problems that have been pointed out are still there. But at least there are signs of positive change here and there. So I just wanted to put a positive spin to all the problems that we have heard about.
Ruth.
I would like to support what Julia has just said. For many years, there seemed to be still practically no other women in the sort of conferences I went to, but now there really are quite a lot. And as you say, fathers are taking much more care of the children.
Yeah, and I'm sure they are having fun doing it, right? It's not just a matter of it being a duty or a chore that needs to be shared. It's also, I think that it's good to have a much more open view of our roles. One of the exactly. One of the things that I wanted to ask is, do you have any regrets, in the sense that, given that being a woman in science comes with maybe a few problems to solve still, would you change your choice now?
No, I think it's still the best career
Not at
choice.
all. There are so many good opportunities and good sides in this job, in this work. I wouldn't change it at all.
And is there anything that makes you particularly proud that maybe, because I don't know if there is a female versus male way of doing science. I really don't think that there is. But is there anything that makes you particularly proud of your job that you would like to share?
maybe I can start. I mean, what I have a research position, so, which means I don't have to teach. So I'm not in contact with many young students. And what I like very much is when I have a PhD student or a student from an internship, and then after the internship or after the PhD, they decided to continue research and to do simulations. And this makes me very proud, because I think that I was able to share my enthusiasm and to show them how nice this work is. So this is what makes me proud, more than results or realization or papers or anything like that.
Comments from other panelists?
Yeah, I tend to very much to agree with that. And you know, in addition to the science, the curiosity, and you know, the interest in understanding that still drives me very much every day. What I really like in my job, and maybe this is not specific to science, is being in contact with a lot of different people, many young people, and a lot of people with different backgrounds. That it's really very enriching, you know, and people from all over the world, and also being, you know, again, when I see my students, or when I see even, you know, my collaborators, you know, and people I've worked with, I could make a contribution and they succeed, and it's really it's a big satisfaction. That's you feel satisfied. You feel okay. I've done something good there. But the fact of working in a international environment and being in contact with people, many young people, but really people of all ages, is something that is even more important now for me than it was in the past.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. If there are no other comments on this part, so thank you. I mean, I think that some themes have popped up in this conversation: the importance of role models, the importance of the environment, the difficulties that we sometimes face. Do you feel that you are getting better with experience? I'm not going to say with age, but with the experience in dealing with these problems or these difficulties, or, you know, awkward comments or things like that. A couple of you mentioned I was very young when there was the first sexist comment that was made to me, and I didn't know how to react.
Yeah. I think I'm getting worse personally, because when I was at the beginning of my career, I think we are quite protected. So yes, we face some sexist comments, but if we don't care, we can move on. And higher you get, more political it gets, and more you realize how things are organized and how men are better organized than you are. And I think for me, that's in a sense almost more complicated now than it was at the younger stage.
And at the same time, I think we're probably more solicited, no? I mean, because now you have to have a woman, at least one woman, in any panel committee. So, I mean, I don't know, how do you deal with that? Because this means, I think, because there are fewer women, that, you know, the number of committees that we are asked to join is...
Yeah, that's still a problem that is not fixed. Yeah, but that's something that will be very easily fixed as soon as there are more women. I think we can share it. But right now, this is the thing that we prioritize. I mean, having priority and learning how to say no. And because otherwise, as you said, we are in every single panel and committee. So that's still a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, it was dealing with the awkward behavior from men, or the sexist remarks and things like that. It's not exactly as Clémence said. Yes, I'm aware now more than when I was younger. But also, men, as you grow older, they don't dare tell you things as when you're young. I think now because they know that I will say, okay, stop it, and then don't talk to me like this. But when I think they're not that kind with, or not nice with younger women. I had more problems when I was younger with men. Now it's okay.
You know, just to throw another argument on the table. I mean, we've talked about the fact that now, you know, you need to have at least one woman in every committee, which I'm not arguing against. But do you think that this could be pushed too far? That in the name of gender equality, or in the name of, you could sort of, in the end, make things worse for female scientists, because, you know, we're not perceived as someone who is there only because of their scientific qualities, but because we are there, because we need to be there, because the university or the institute or the center needs sort of bond girls.
That's the risk of quota, but I don't know how to do otherwise.
Ruth, you.
I was going to say, I suppose it's 20 years ago now since I retired, but I do remember some young women saying to me they'd only been appointed to, I've forgotten, lectureships or the next step up because they were women. And I had to reassure them that it was because their science was good.
Yeah, that's Julia.
So, Sarah, I think that the problem you point out is a general problem of how we improve diversity and what to do without, you know, having all the actions that are, in principle, good action backfire, right? And this is a problem also, for example, in American universities and also national labs, and probably this is true also in Europe. We are constantly asked to take all kind of classes or surveys, and you know, and these are in many instances cover your ass operations, right? Because they want you to take all of these classes that, okay, well, you know, we have fixed the diversity problem, and so. But they have some, you know, minor positive effects. So there is some thinking to be done there about how do we promote diversity in a way that is honest, that is making true progress. And I don't know the answer to that, but we should think how to educate people in a way that it's not just checking a box. I feel that in many instances, we want to check boxes. We still want to check boxes. At least by checking boxes, we have brought the problem to the attention of more people than were before. So this is a good thing. There is much more to be done than checking boxes. And but, you know, if you ask me, how would you fix the problem? Although I'm really interested in the problem, I don't have a solution for you.
That's
right? So this is difficult. It's not that people, you know, everybody's mean and nobody wants to implement solution. It's just that finding a solution that is not checking a box and that it is complicated. And of course, you know, maybe there is a solution at the end of the day, which is starting very early at school and educating people starting from primary school in different ways. But solutions are difficult. This means we have to think harder.
Clemence, you wanted to comment on that? Or?
No, I completely agree. I mean, the problem is that we want it to improve, but it's not always easy to identify the perfect solution. I mean, having many more women will solve a lot of our problem. How to get there without having quota, without having, you know, this is another dimension on the problem. So it's not easy.
No, I also completely agree. And I mean, it's not just about women. I think it's a problem every time that we have to deal with, you know, minorities, diversity, in the broadest sense of the word. And
yes. Still, I mean, an anecdote, I got a promotion a few years ago, and it was quite difficult to get. And I was in competition with, of course, men and other women. I was happy that I got it, but I heard that some men said that I got it because I was a woman. And still, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. So still nowadays, you get this kind of remarks. But personally, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't think we can.
If you want to say that, that's okay. But still, we still have to face this kind of things nowadays.
No, I agree.
I don't know how to promote. I agree with Julia. I mean, I don't know how to promote the place of women or minorities in different ways, except maybe networking. I think is a good thing to do, and we should really develop more networks to promote our colleagues.
You know, to be fully honest, when I hear those comments, and I hear them a lot, you got this because you were a woman, actually much more than before. I tell myself, I shouldn't care, I don't care. And then a couple of days later, I do care.
Yeah.
Because these comments are hurtful. And even if I shouldn't care, and you know, if you ask me rationally, I ask myself, why should I care? I say I shouldn't, but then I do. And so these comments are not innocent.
No, they have consequences, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yes. I mean, I think we all have closer exactly. Experiences with these sort of things, but yes, or, you know, I mean, yeah. Okay, I think we're, thank you very much. This has been lovely. I think we are sort of ready to move to the next phase. But before we do that, maybe, I mean, it's a complex problem. It's important to be aware that it is a complex problem, and it's important to talk about it, I think, to raise further awareness and maybe to train each other to listen more to one another among women and men, and maybe also among men who might start talking about this in different terms. So the theme of the day is how can women be agents of change? So change is difficult, it takes time. So I'm not going to ask you what we need to do in order to change things, but maybe a round of the table in which you tell me what you would like to see change even more. So where do you hope that we will be in 5 years, say, with respect to this particular problem?
Yeah, maybe I can tell you about, you know, what I would like to see is a more honest realization that there is still a problem and that we can work together at solving the problem. And one, you know, and the realization must come not only from men, but also from women. And let me tell you my personal experience and why I think I got wiser with age. You know, at the beginning of my career, I actually didn't pay much attention to this problem other than for myself. I didn't do anything else for others because I was so worried to show that I was good, right? I was really, you know, I need, and there were barriers. And then at some point when things got better for me, I was too worried to show that what I got was not because I was a woman. And very late, I realized that actually it was very, very important to look at the problem as a whole and participate at solving the problem, not only for myself, but for others. And it took a long time to me to realize that I had to spend time. I had to spend time to promote diversity. I had to spend time with other women to networking, and, you know, and I think that if this happened to me, maybe it happened also to other people. And so we need to work to put this problem at the forefront and to make people understand this is a problem that we have at the institutional level, at the personal level, at the educational level, to work at together. It's not an easy realization.
Thank you, Julia. Ruth, you told me that your relationship with the notion of being a role model has changed through the years. I wonder whether there is a connection with what Julia was saying.
Possibly. I'm sure as an undergraduate, and I expect to, probably as an undergraduate, we felt these were all problems of the past, and we felt we were optimistic, you know, and we felt that you know, role models were. I think if somebody had asked me, though I'm sure I had role models, I wouldn't have admitted to it. But later on, I've come to realize that role models are indeed very important.
Magali and Clémence, do you have any comments before we move to the Q&A?
Not really, actually. I don't know where what we can do, or what I hope to change. I would like mainly men to change.
Yeah.
Not the perception of not all of them, but some of them. Still, you know, when you want to tell something in a meeting, you have hard time to don't listen to you, or just explain something you already know, and things like that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then
you're speaking, and then they don't just.
And then 5 minutes later, they will repeat what you said.
They repeat what you
and
said. Everybody says,
agrees.
"Oh yeah, that's a fantastic idea." And then I said, "Oh no, again." And then, you know, it happens to all of us, and that. I mean, it's an utopia, of course. I don't know how to change that. I think we have to change the education of young boys, and this would be the first step.
But the problem is that all the effort are placed on training the woman, right? There's no effort.
We have to train the man, and not the man, right?
Yeah.
Train the men is a dangerous word, I think.
No. But I use this word in quotation. But when I see the email I received to have a training on whatever, I mean, it's a bit frustrating that I have to be so trained just because I am a woman, and my male colleague, they should learn how to stand up for us, you know, in committee. They should learn. They should.
No, they don't need to behave. Just
they don't need to talk and shine all the time. They can also give space to others, and they need to learn that.
And I think it's due to it's a very competitive domain and research, and this comes from this. You know, you have to be a very, very strong competitor.
Yeah, but we are a part of that, and
yes,
but yeah.
But yes, okay. So I think this is a good moment. We are running long, but I think this is part of our tradition when there are lively and interesting discussions. So I hope that nobody will mind. And in particular, Susanna and Sara, thank you for your patience. I hope this is interesting also for you. But I would like now to move to the interactive part with the audience. We already have a comment from Artemi Bendandi that I will read in a moment. But you know, let me invite you all again to participate. Let us know that you want to ask a question or make a comment, and we will invite you to unmute and ask the question directly to our panelists. So what Artemi is writing is a proverbial comment instead of a question. It certainly feels as though the academic system was built for men because of the mobility that it requires. Indeed, male academics would move from country to country with their wives and families in tow. This meant, of course, that the women would sacrifice their careers. I very seldom see female researchers who have relocated and have been followed by their partners. Instead, I see the opposite a lot, even today. I really believe that to encourage more women to advance in scientific careers, there is a need for fundamental change on this. Second comment, it is starting to really feel like the Q&A of a conference. Reading interviews of women in science, I always see questions on children, etc., while I never see the same questions asked to men. And I firmly believe that the family responsibilities should be treated as equal and not just as a burden of the women in academia. Thank you, Artemi. I just wanted to add a personal observation. There was a very nice online event a couple of months ago, and there were male panelists and female panelists, and they were asked to introduce themselves. And all of the women panelists added the fact that they were married with children to their presentation, and none of the male panelists did this, right? So this is maybe just another element to our conversation. do we have more questions for the audience? And while we wait, are there any questions that anybody in the panel would like to address to each other? Sophie Johnson would like to ask a question. Yes, of course. Sophie, I think we are inviting you to unmute yourself.
Okay, yes, I think you can hear me. Thank you. This has been an amazing talk to hear, and I've had the honor of being taught by Professor Sara Bareilles myself just this last semester, and working with Professor Ursula Roethlisberger here at EPFL. And I just wanted to comment briefly on the fact that you all mentioned, change is hard, and I think Julia, you mentioned quite, I think, eloquently that you would like the awareness to be raised. But perhaps my cynical American side of me is thinking, when institutes have been built around certain systems that have worked for a long time for the most people, it's hard to institute change because, well, things are working okay enough. And so this might be a really trivial question, because I think we inherently see the value of diversity and women and minority voices. But how could we maybe articulate the value in such a way that it truly becomes a problem, or to be seen as a problem to those who have authority to make change right now? In that I'm saying, until you tell somebody this is why it's broken and here's how it's broken and here's how the brokenness is actually making an impact, it's hard then to sort of advocate for change. So just curious if you could state some of the inherent value that we might be losing when we make it so difficult for women and minorities to have a voice in higher education and in research. Not because I don't see the problem myself, but just wondering, how can I be a better advocate more clearly? I don't know if my question is clear, but basically, how could you restate the problem and the value that we're losing when we're not fixing this problem?
I think the question is very clear, Sophie. The
Thanks.
answer might be very difficult.
Sure.
Julia, please.
Yeah, I would, thanks for the question. I would say two things to that, which are not really answers, but maybe are the beginning of an answer. The first thing I would say is that change can come from the trenches. And one thing that I realize myself is that, I have a group of students and postdoc, and there have been times where, and for example, when I arrived first in Chicago, my group was all men. And then one student, one woman student, for whom, by the way, I became way too much overprotective. But anyway, this is another problem. And then I realized that I had to do something myself. And when I was hiring new people in front of 3 really good male postdocs that I really liked, take my time to go out of my way to see, let me look for another, let me see if there is a woman postdoc. It's not easy because you have 3 male postdocs. It just so happened that they were male. Good, in front of you, you want to work at your grant, and you tell, and then you say, okay, wait a minute, let's wait for a couple of more months so that I look whether there is a diverse pool of postdoc. It's not easy. And so I had to force myself to do that. And actually, I did change the composition of my group by doing that. So you can act and be, yourself an action of change, but taking responsibility. This is the first thing that I would say. And then sometimes there are like tunneling events in an institution that really can precipitate change. So in Chicago, very male-dominated institution, it just so happens that now we have a dean of physical science and a provost. They are women and excellent scientists. And these 2 women are really bringing change because they are actually gathering the support of others. So pushing for these events to happen at the top of an institution, as well as the bottom, like changing your group, can be very important. Both can be very important.
Comments from the other panelists? Advocating is tricky, right? Because to some extent, the arguments are obvious. a more diverse environment is more likely to produce more original solutions. People who disagree with each other through their conversations and their fights are more likely to come up with better solution to problems, more efficient solution to problems. But it's not easy. And I have to say, yeah, we've also lived, and we still live in part in a moment in which things that we were sort of taking for granted in terms of what had been established as common sense is being questioned. And so I think it's even more important to as Julia was saying, find ways of having testimonials, people who can lead by example, and exercise publicly the use of good reason. I think it was Kant who said that at some point. Rosario Bailina has a question, please.
Hi, first of all, I would like to thank you for this panel because it's extremely interesting to be hearing from women in science, especially at my age, as I am right now starting my career. I'm looking for a I'm going to start my master's next year, hopefully. So it's very inspiring to hear from women that have full-on careers and that have faced a lot in the scientific community. And I have a lot of questions as an enthusiastic young person, but I will start with one and I will post in the chat later about the others. And I just wanted to start with the main point of this panel, which is women as advocates for change. And I wanted to mention something that Clémence said, which I thought it was interesting, which is that all the training is aimed at women. And a lot of the change is put on women under the women's responsibility. Of course, it is for us and for the younger generations of women that this needs to happen. But I think that now we need to start also finding ways of sending that responsibility towards our male colleagues to show them that women shouldn't be only the ones worrying about this, and really that it shouldn't be your job to educate them on how to change their environment or our environment. And I would like to hear what you think about that and how can we convey that message to our male colleagues.
I think you're completely right. I mean, it's not our job to make them change, but what is needed is some kind of wish from the top. They put so much resources on all this. Again, I'm repeating myself, but all those training for the woman, I have never seen them putting the same amount of effort for a training. I should not use this word, Sara is right, but but it's cool. I don't see why not. Could be easy to implement, to raise awareness, but not only on equal opportunity, but more generally on how to behave, Magali.
Yeah, I have something to say, and I really agree with you, Rosario. I don't know how to do it because we have a long way to go. Because, for instance, in CNRS in France, they started to do something to change things in the labs around equality. So they have this equality, organization type of communication all across France. And they asked that in each lab, there would be someone who is a referent of equality and that share problems related to to equality issues, and also share communications about actions for women and for other minorities. And in my lab, there were men that didn't want it to happen in the lab, that they didn't want to receive the emails about the actions and communications about this. So nowadays, men still don't want to hear about it. So how do you do to educate people that don't want to be educated? This is a big problem.
But peer pressure, you know, is maybe some of them are really happy to do it and to contribute. At some point, the other one will hopefully
they will retire and then,
and then
get rid of them.
A new theory in physics is not accepted because everybody thinks it's right. It's just because the ones who think it's wrong will retire at some point.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, no, I agree. I also think we should be careful and open. I mean, I am not going to deny or minimize the problem. It's there. We've all experienced it on our skin. I have. I mean, you know, but I think it's very important also to recognize that, like, not all women are equal, not all men are equal, and there are different ways to actually address this problem. And some men even have training. I mean, for example, you know, we are now in the process of searching for a new director here at CICAM, and the president of the CICAM Council went through some material that was provided by EPFL to try to minimize gender bias in the examination of candidates. So there are, you know, baby steps, but there are steps. I am convinced that talking to one another is always the best option. But yes, but putting the problem on the table. I mean, and being aware, because I am surprised to realize that when I was young, I didn't pay much attention to these sort of things either. And it was sort of normal, right? That maybe, you know, my professor of electromagnetism would say, well, you know, but why do you look disappointed if you've got not the top grade, but the next to top grade? Because for a woman, this is already a remarkable result. And I was, you know, too young to realize the implications of something like this. Francesca.
So I would like just to be provocative, okay? So allow me to do that. Could a woman say no to a man without consequences? And how is a good way to say no? Before Clémence was saying that, so becoming older, usually you also learn how to say no. But sometimes there are different ways that a woman and a man say no to the others. Is it our problem that we have to be trained, that is allowed to say no, that is allowed, that is so eventually so, I was, let me say also sometimes wrong, okay? But so something that is a no or not.
Sure, should I reply no? I don't know. We have comments from the panel.
No, we need no more training. So.
No, we don't need no more, no, definitely no more training. But is that so we are always able, so also before, so Julia was saying, that, so when I was young, I was worried to show somehow my weaknesses, okay? So we were not willing to say no. Every job, everything that someone was given to you, you were saying yes, because so you were pushed to be always at the top. While sometimes it's better to say no, because it's better to do one job well than two not so good. Could we say no? And so that one is many sense.
I think one needs confidence. That's a solution to a lot of things. So you have a confidence to decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and to say no to the ones you don't want to do.
I think the problem is that at the younger age, you don't really know in advance when you should say yes, when you should say no. So you say yes too many times until you realize that you should have said no to that and yes to that. So it comes with experience also.
I think I agree with Ruth that really to know what you want to do and what you don't want to do. I totally agree. But I think that if I'm not mistaken, Francesca, you mean that sometimes when you say no to a man, there are consequences. And so some men, is that right?
Exactly, some men. So it's always
silly
to
they don't
be
invite you anymore, and they don't want to deal with you anymore because you said no once. So this happened, but I think it's a problem of ego rather than a problem of men and women.
Yeah, I think it's really, although to some extent there are characterizations, no? I mean, you know, sometimes you hear that if a man says no, it's because they know what they want, and if a woman says no, it's because she's being aggressive or something. And that's so occasionally there are also these sort of things. But I will not stress enough the fact that I agree we should not generalize. I mean, there are differences in both sexes. David Romascano, please.
It was just a comment saying, yeah, I'm curious on how many men are in the audience now. Like, is it something like, yeah?
Great question.
I'm curious if we are maybe 10%, 50.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that it's a reverse proportion to what usually happens in workshops. So, but there are some, and that's very good. I'm very.
But as you said, like something probably men have to discuss among ourselves, and it has to do with also other aspects in society, like all these privileges, like privileged groups usually don't notice the problem because you don't see it, you're not, you don't feel the consequences, right? So yeah, men should talk to other men about the issue, and also because it will just make things better for everyone. Like when there is the diversity of opinions, I think when people discuss sincerely, like the output is always better than when everyone is on their own side thinking about stuff. And yeah, but thank you very much for this discussion. I find it really interesting.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Actually, there is a comment to, if I along the line, David, that you made by another David that I know very well, by the way, to Magali's point, saying that men have been privileged for so long that equality feels like oppression, and this needs to be conveyed to men. And I believe this is a very important point, that, sometimes equality is not perceived as equality by men, but as taking away privileges that they did like for a long time. So how to do that is a problem. That's if there are other questions, I'll wait. But there is a point that I want to make that regarding the word that you use, being aggressive.
Please go ahead.
So I heard so many times addressed to me and to many other women that I know that you are too aggressive and you are too ambitious. And the two is clearly related to the fact that we are women. And I have never heard the same comments to my male colleagues. You are too ambitious. Actually, I've always heard that it's good to be ambitious. And so this is the other things that we have to change, that, there is a difference in the way we are perceived to this day. I'm not young anymore, unfortunately, and I still hear you're too aggressive and you're too ambitious. Too for what? Too for whom?
Yeah, that's.
I totally agree with you, Julia. I heard many times in conferences when you ask a question, which is just a question and you don't agree with or disagree with this thing that is said, then everybody said, all men said, wow, you're aggressive.
Yeah.
Aggressive. And I've been told that many times, and I don't think I'm a kind of aggressive and violent person, so, but I just dare to ask a question.
What I was told once was, you should say, I'm not aggressive, I'm assertive.
Indeed. So, Artemi, why don't you ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment, right? But related to what Rosario said before, and this is something I've been thinking about actually since yesterday when I had a lovely conversation with a very nice woman in science as well. And she told me that when a man says that a woman was only given her position or her grant or published or whatever because she is a diversity placeholder, that person maybe should be told that they are a homogeneity placeholder. And I really wonder if the fact that we are taking all the burden of educating, being advocates, and we are really just told, yeah, you should be a role model all the time. Maybe that makes us also much more self-conscious as thinking of ourselves as diversity hires, but I highly doubt that any white man who represents the majority has ever been self-conscious as a homogeneity hire, or as having been chosen instead of a maybe more capable woman for that position, or a more capable member of another minority for that position. So yeah, that was the comment. And if I may add something regarding the fact that we are being called aggressive or too ambitious, and the fact that we we are very often are being treated differently when we ask questions. Very often I want to ask a question, but I start trying to answer it in my mind and to convince myself that the question is not needed or something, maybe in a conference or at work, in a work setting, and then a man asks the same question. So I think that we as girls have been taught to just not be so out there as men. So it certainly starts from when we were little, I think. But yeah, thank you so much for the very inspiring conversation today and for having this event.
Thank you for joining. Lucy, do you want to?
Yes, I could repeat what I wrote. I don't know how insightful this is. And thank you very much, by the way, for organizing this. I recognize many of the discussions and arguments I've heard in different fora. I think the awareness probably amongst women now is, pretty high. And I wonder if we're going to be able to actually act on the system. To me, it seems like there's a bigger question, which is really the system that we all live in. And I think it doesn't leave a lot of space, basically, for these discussions beyond the groups that are directly impacted. So I have in my group some men who are, generally good young men. And I think they could, in principle, want to engage more in the discussion. But also they have, to graduate, and for that they have to write papers and so on and so forth. So, they have to pick basically where they put their time and so on. And I think it's been said before, do we really want to have more mandated activities? Because that only kind of increases the pressure on everyone, but maybe that would make it more equal. But anyways, I don't know how to solve it, but I feel like the overall publish or perish type of approach that we have to science is just detrimental generally to being able to make, profound changes in the area of diversity in general and gender equality in particular. I'd be happy to hear comments from the panel to this.
If I may just interject, I also sometimes wonder whether the publish or perish is not detrimental to good science in general, but this is perhaps a broader discussion for another moment. I don't know if there are comments.
I totally agree with you, Sara. It's bad for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, and you're right, Lucy. But I don't know what to say and how we can change this. Unfortunately, the whole system that is made like this.
Yes, I think over the years, the system has become much more competitive, which I deplore.
I totally agree with you, Ruth. And it's not good, and it's not good for science.
No. David, Gigi. Hello.
I think the point were made already. I think Julia Julia mentioned this point before.
The fact that, okay, then we just move on. Rosario, do you want to ask at least another one of your questions, and then we will close with you maybe?
Yes, I don't want to run too long, but I have, as I said, I'm starting my career now, and it's very nice to have women that have been through what I'm going through now. And I would like to hear about it a little bit. It's a bit of a more personal question, I think, and I understand if it's not too easy to answer, but I wanted to ask whether there were moments in your careers where you doubted about your next steps, or whether you doubted whether you were good enough, and how did you move past it?
Answer is yes, yes, and yes.
Yes, yes, I totally.
That's.
I can tell you something if you want, Rosario. And during my PhD, the beginning of the second year, I decided to stop. And I was with Michele Parinello as my PhD student. I went to his office and I said, look, I can't anymore. It's too hard. It's too much work, and I'm far from my family. It's too difficult, and I will quit. And he was very nice with me. He told me, look, it happens to everybody. And you go to your family for 2 weeks and you sleep, you cry, and then you come back. That's what I did. And I went back and I finished my PhD, and I'm very happy that I did this. So there are times where hard times, and you just have to go through. And if you have a family that can help you, it's good. It's good not to be alone. And there are other times also when I had my kids, when I had my babies, and when they were not sleeping, and I was so tired that I couldn't think. So I was, for months, I couldn't do anything, any research, and I was happy to have a permanent position at that time, because I don't know how I could have continued. And then came back when my children would sleep again, I could get some sleep again, and my brain would function again. And there are some hard moments, but I'm sure men have difficult moments too, right?
But I think we need to distinguish this kind of, I'm going to call them mini burnout, right? I think we have all up and down, and those are sometimes mini or actual burnout from thinking that we are not good enough to continue. I think it's different. Like the burnout style is somehow irrational. While if you're like, oh, I want to stop because you're not good enough, this is for me 2 different problems. And I also suffered from the burnout thing, but I don't think I ever wanted to stop because I thought I wasn't good in what I was doing. But so it's 2 different things, I feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. I never thought of stopping because I was not good. I thought about stopping because it was a bit too much sometimes. And you, Julia,
I never, I never really thought that I would stop, but seriously, but I had, and actually honestly still have, doubts, about, is this really worth it? Because it's so difficult, And of course, it was mentioned by Lucie, the publish and perish culture is with you and stays with you at all. Of course, I'm tenured and so on and so forth. And you would think, who cares, if I publish, or not that paper, they will not take tenure away from me, but you still care, you are in the system where you're pushed and pushed and pushed. And sometimes you ask yourself, is this race really worth it? And how do I change it? So I never really thought of stopping, but the creeping doubt has been with me for a long time.
Yes, I would recommend sabbaticals.
Yeah, you were right. So right.
I've learned something new and slightly changed direction, and that's been stimulating.
Yeah, I would add that doubts are good, no? I mean,
yeah. In a way, they really are.
I don't think, and I think we should all be aware that in different ways, we all have our own areas of fragility. I mean, I don't know if it's in the notion that we, should have done a different choice professionally or whatever. But I think we should maybe get in the mood that having doubts, questioning our choices, questioning ourselves is good, because it sets new challenges and it's a way to grow, right? Also, I mean, confidence is important, but it's something that you build through challenges. And then you never know. I mean, I don't know that I will be able to solve the problem that I will face tomorrow, but still that's half of the fun, because, I mean, I am probably not a very good scientist, but I mean, if I ask myself 10 questions, and I find an answer that I'm happy with for half of them, I consider myself very lucky. And usually I am, a bit high because of that for months. Right? So the 5 that I couldn't answer, they're part of the game. I think this is also something that we should perhaps consider as a strength. But I must say that I find myself in a completely privileged position. In this respect, being the deputy director of CICAM is beautiful, because a lot of the pressure that I am hearing from my colleagues here are there, of course, in different ways, but they are mitigated. It's a different way of being an active science, I think. Magali.
I would like to tell something to Rosario and to all the young students, men and women actually, because we are, since 1 hour or more, I've been saying about all the problems we have to face. But I would like to say that this work, being in research, is really fun. It's really great. It's something, I mean, I'm really happy to have chosen this, because there are many good sides. Like every day, it's a bit different, and you learn all the time. And it's like, for me, even more simulation is like playing mind games. I have the feeling that I'm playing every day. So it's really fun, and I really enjoy what I'm doing. And the fact that, what Julia said, the fact that you can go to conferences, meet people from all over the world. It's my dog.
She agreed. She agreed.
And I really enjoy this job, even if sometimes it's difficult. I would push you to do this if this is what you like, and research is what you want to do.
No, I totally agree. I mean, there are days in which I can't believe that they pay me for doing this. So that is amazing to me. Yes. I see that we still have a comment from Julia, which I probably mispronounced the name, I apologize, about the impact that COVID had in particular on female scientists. And I think this is a super interesting point. I would really sort of take this as the last point. I don't know, Julia, if you want to comment a little bit on this, and then we move to the last part of this meeting, if you don't mind. Julia, do you want to elaborate on your comment? Let us know why you felt that this was...
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, such a pleasure. Like, thank you so much. It was amazing listening to you all and the experiences. And yeah, I just really wanted to listen a bit more about how did you feel, you know, through this 2 years. I know that I can say for myself that I had very tough familiar times, you know, that they really push us to the limit. And our profession already does that enough. So I think that it would be interesting to see your perspectives and how did you feel the load, the extra load during these two pandemic years?
So maybe I start with respect to the of course, the kids being homeschooled, it had a lot of problem, right? I think that's what you might also be referring to. The chance, at least for me, is that the school were not closed. They were closed in like very shortly in the spring 2020, but then everything was back to normal for the kids. So then, as soon as this was solved, if I can speak like that, the rest was okay. This was really the biggest problem, was to have to homeschool the kids while doing my own work. And when they could go back, I cannot complain. I think other people had a much tougher COVID period than I had.
Okay, then maybe thank you very, very much to Julia, Ruth, Magali, and Clémence for sharing this time and their experiences and thoughts with us. And
thank you.
Susanna, Sara, did you feel comfortable among all these scientists? How are you?
Yeah, well, it was really interesting for me because a lot of my family is, we have a lot of scientists in my family. So I hear some topics that I've heard discussed before a lot of times. And it's a very interesting hearing that from I don't know, from you.
Thank you. So I think that one of the reasons why we decided to invite you and to collaborate with you on this notion of comics has to do with things that we heard in this conversation, which is that it's important to address this type of topics at an early age with people. And so in particular, you know, I was wondering if you could both maybe share some ideas as to why, if and why comics could be a good way to disseminate science, or the notion that you know, women can do science too, or in general, scientific culture.
Well, I don't know if comics is a good way, but I think it's one powerful tool that can be used as long as it's thought truly, because I don't know. We have a lot of comics that are not so good. I don't know. It's not really about the media you're using. I think it's the comics can be a really good media, but I'm not sure that
content over form. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But had either of you been approached before for something like this? Sara, maybe?
No, it's the first time, but in fact, I thought it. I don't know. I read a lot of comics and science comics, and I thought they were brilliant. I thought it was a marvelous way to communicate science, and I think we should do that more with the other media too, because I don't know, maybe it's not the answer you're expecting, but I don't know. Comics is very direct way to communicate. So maybe for this reason is a good way to communicate science. I'm not sure it's really the best. I don't know, probably one of the best, but.
So let me tell you maybe why we thought that it might be good to do this. And while I do that,
Yeah.
maybe I can start sharing my screen to show what we have been up to in the past few months. I hope you can see it. And I also hope that this becomes much bigger now with a little bit of help. Exactly. So for me, it's because it's perhaps unusual. And first of all, it forces us scientists to think about things in an unusual way. But then also because it offers a language that enables us to go out in the broad wide world and see, you know, how a kid in high school, for example, would react to something like this. So maybe Susanna, why don't you tell a little bit what this is about? What was the notion? And then Sara
Yes.
can tell us.
When I was asked by Andrea Plazzi, who is the chief of Comics and Science, to if I can write a comic about women in computing, I was very excited because I love to talk about women and write stories about women, but I did know nothing about computing, so maybe that was an issue at the time. But at the end, I don't know. Wow, it's so difficult to explain how we went through the process, but
we had a few conversations, right? Trying to narrow down the
yeah. At first, as you know, I wrote a story about robots in the future and computing women in the past. And because I discovered a lot of these marvelous characters and persons, people, so I wanted to talk about them, and we discussed that, and we thought that maybe it was a little bit pedantic way to explain the issue. And so I move on, and I came out with a Victorian spy story, which is Cherchez les femmes. And excuse me for my horrible French pronunciation. And well, that was because I don't know. I thought that a spy story and a detective story could be the right way to explain how the scientific reasoning goes. So, because since I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan and I'm a huge Ada Lovelace fan too, so I simply decided to write a story about a young mathematician called Augusta and a middle-aged misogynist called Shine Noons. And that was it. I don't know, I think it was really interesting try to explain to others something I actually didn't understand. So at the end of the day, I don't understand it even now, but I maybe had a grasp about it, you know, how it could be thinking in a more mathematical way. I don't know.
I think you're being too modest, because I think you do understand what we are all about right now. But it's true that the process was interesting, and it's also true that, for example, I realized that there are different sort of notions in the scientific storytelling or in the storytelling in a screen for a comics, right? You were very worried about the order in which we presented hypotheses. Instead, I was more democratic in that. Sara, I was just wondering, when you approached this story, did you do it in a different way? Are there parts of the work that sort of evolved in ways that are not your usual way of drawing a comic? And maybe here I can stop sharing my screen in case you want to show us something.
Thank you. This time I had to work on Susanna's script, and it was so good that I didn't had any difficulty to find out the characters, to draw them, and to find the right atmosphere, and to draw the locations. So despite I usually work as a writer and a comic artist too, this time it has been easy to work on such a clear script. So may I show you the process maybe?
We should perhaps say that one of the underlying themes here is that detection is very much a quasi-mathematical process, as the misogynist detective explains to us, and therefore one that women, savages, and dogs cannot really hope to tackle, right? And then all of a sudden, this young woman actually manages to help solve the mystery by using what we love to call in the academic work computational thinking. An algorithmic structure to the science of detective deduction. And this was fun because actually agreeing on how to convey that part of the message was where we really had to try to understand each other. Maybe.
Yes, to meet the comics way of thinking and drawing with the mathematical way of thinking about a process. So we had to make the two worlds meet, and this has been funny and good to learn. So I'm gonna show you now maybe the steps of the work. So let me change the camera.
Where do we find this?
Oh, this is on the SICAM website. I will.
Okay, thank you.
Give you guys a URL at the end, and I will also make a proposition on the use of these comics from now on.
Okay, thank you.
So I received this script from Susanna, and so each page has the name and dialogues and atmosphere and characters. And then for every page I did a small, can you see it? Or maybe
it's very small.
Very small, yes, it's tiny. I work with very tiny pages for the first step, like this. It's just to understand how to put the single panels on the page. These are 2 pages we had to discuss a lot about, in a good way, I mean. And so it's page 14 and 15. Sara knows. Then this is my first very rough first step. Then after this, I just a moment. Can I share the screen? Yes, I can. Okay. So Susanna provided me this first and maybe way of do the 2 pages.
Yes, that was my understanding of an algorithm. So
this first one?
Yeah.
Susanna tried to translate comics, the story, into this into a mathematical way of thinking. So this was the first attempt. Then I tried to make a storyboard, which is more precise, more a drawing, more clear. No, this was the second, sorry. This is the first, Susanna's. Then I did a second attempt, and then Sara corrected us with this. I help. I can't. Okay.
That's blue.
I'm sorry. Okay. I can't move this because okay, I find it. This one was Sara's corrections. So here we
corrections. I mean suggestions, right?
No, it's good because here we understood more, in a more clear way what you were trying to tell us. So maybe, right, Susanna?
Yes, for us it was correction, but it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry, because we didn't understood what we were doing. So it was okay. If you don't know something, someone arrives and tell you.
One thing that I was really surprised by was the very cautious tone with which you asked me questions in your email. Forgive me if I didn't quite understand exactly.
Make it until you make it. That's my motto.
No, I agree, but I think this ties back into the discussion that we were having before, which is this sort of, reverential fear that people who are not scientists feel towards scientific topics, because you were really, really worried that I might, explode and tell you, oh, come on, you don't understand anything at all, or whatever. So, sorry, Sara, I interrupted you though.
No, it's just that comics are, there are a lot of rules, but you can change them whenever you want. And we felt that in maths world, in science world, it's not like that. So we were worried about this. And but this has been a good discussion about these 2 pages, because eventually we find out, and I have been able to draw this page, which was not the final, but it was the step to that would have brought to the final version, which is just a moment. I changed the camera.
Suspense.
Which was this one.
In the meantime, I think courier arrives at my door.
Okay. These 2 pages. And so I wanted to draw the finals with, not digitally. So this is paper, ink, and watercolor. I worked with Photoshop on the storyboards instead, because it's easier to do. But then I printed out the storyboards this way, and I traced it over this with ink and watercolor. So this has been probably my favorite step to do.
Maybe can I show everybody the colored final
yes, of course.
pages as they are now in the final product. Here you go. And this is really the best compromise that we could find between a cartoon of a flowchart with if, then, else, and loops, and a comic page. So that was a bit the notion and the idea of the fun of doing this. So Julia asked, where can you find it?
I already did.
Yes. So I typed in the chat for everybody the address, which is sicam.org/chercher les femmes, with a dash between chercher et les, then femmes. It's there. This is literally hot off the press. I mean, we got it like, I'm not going to say 5 minutes ago, but you know, a few hours ago. So we haven't really had time to really go through it and make sure that there are no glitches, no problems with the proofs, but we feel confident that this is very close to what the final product is going to be. And you're all more than welcome to download it and have a look and read it and hopefully have some fun. But there is more than that, because the notion that Ignacio and I have with this type of work is that we are producing material for the community. So if any of you feels in the mood of actually downloading this and then using it as a tool for dissemination, or something that you can do in your local high school, or that you may want to, you know, share with friends and family, this is exactly why we're doing this. Now, in truth, this is only the first ingredient of a more ambitious editorial project that we have here at SICAM, which is going to complement this comics, which tells the story of Augusta the detective and her friend Biji, although we haven't really decided if the pronunciation of the name is Biji or Bi, this we leave to you. But so there is this story here, which is, you know, a way to tell, hopefully in a fun language, something about the notion of computational thinking, algorithms, how you can use them, and the fact that, as we were saying before, you shouldn't let anybody tell you what you can or cannot be. And this is a core part of the message, I hope, from these comics. But the idea is that we're going to actually build on this and create a whole comic issue in which we are going to describe the role of women in computational sciences, in modeling, and maybe also, yes, kill a few of these false myths that say that girls are not good with computing. I was looking at some statistics today, and it's amazing because in STEM faculties, okay, there is this problem of minority, but if you go in computer science, then figures really plummet. I mean, the number of girls that start a career in that area is even lower than the number of girls that try in physics or chemistry. So, and this is, to me, paradoxical, because of course, computing in the early days was a woman's business. The first computers were women. The first developers of algorithms were women, Ada Lovelace. The first programmers were women. We have all seen Hidden Figures, for example, telling the story of the NASA programmers. And then at some point, this changed. And nowadays, the standard culture is that you have to be a nerd boy with spectacles to be interested in computers, which is completely false, and in particular false if you want to do simulation in life. So we hope to build on this first piece of the publication, but as I was saying, this is there for the community to use. And of course, we would also love to hear some feedback from you. So have a look and let us know what you think about it, okay? I don't know, is there anything else that any of the panelists or people from the audience would like to say before we move to close?
I would just like to say that I'm really glad you gave me and us this opportunity, and I would really like to thank you for organizing this. This was very interesting. I hope it was interesting also for the audience, and this was a very good idea. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to second that. I think it's been a very useful afternoon.
No, thank you all for coming and sharing your experiences with us. This was a team effort. I mean, it's something that we thought we really felt we wanted to do at SICAM, is just one step in our attempts at getting better and becoming part of the solution, and not part of the problem, even unknowingly, because this is the trickiest bit, I think, is that you never realize when you're not doing all that you could do to try to improve situations. And so it's super important to talk, listen, and exchange. So Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Clemence. Thank you, Magali. Thank you, Susanna and Sara, for accepting the adventure of sharing with a bunch of scientists this afternoon. I think we are ready to close. I just wanted to, in a good CCAM tradition, just attract your attention to the next event online that we're going to host. And this is a lecture in this mixed gen series that we have started with the pandemics, but that has turned out to be one of the best things for us that came out of the pandemics. It's a series of lectures in which we invite experienced speakers, and we also give the opportunity to young people, PhD students or junior postdocs, to present their work and interact at a time, like the time of the pandemic, in which this has been more difficult than usual. And with that, thank you very much to the panel. Thank you very much to all of you who have stayed with us for this afternoon and who are still with us. You will find the recording of this event and of all other CCAM lectures and of our lectures together with Marvel on the CCAM website or on the Materials Cloud website. You are more than welcome to, let us know what you thought about this and how we can do better in the future. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.